I was looking at this and saying, like you said before, it's not maybe desirable that America changes. You recognize this is in progress. It is happening. It, in some sense, has happened. And as maybe a young person, though, and being precocious and also impulsive and immature, I was trying to find the vocabulary and language to talk about these things. And I was interested in opinions on this.
Dude, you're 100% right. Dude, I used to talk about this all the time because, as you mentioned, I was a big Ron Paul supporter when he was running for president. And when he was running for president, which is, looking back at it now in 2025 is so goddamn funny, but they'd always bring up the racist Ron Paul newsletters. The racist newsletters, which, by the way, if you look at that, it was so tame compared to anything. It was literally I think one of the things was they said, one guy in the newsletter said the LA riots only stopped because they needed their welfare check or something.
Right.
Which is so you're just, and they would Ron Paul of all people to try to paint him as a hater of some sort, a dude who does not have a hateful, is just a Christian baby doctor who's been married to the same woman for 60 something years. And they would try to pull that up, and then you'd notice oh, okay, but you look at the things Joe Biden has said in his day, look at things Hillary Clinton has said, look at all oh no, they don't ever get hit for that. In fact, the greatest libertarian theorist of all time, Murray Rothbard, in one of his most controversial articles, and we talked about this, I think, the first time we podcasted together, but he wrote this thing about David Duke, and he was making the point how they're like, well, why is it that they hate David Duke so much? And I go, oh, you say because he used to be in the Klan? And I go, well, Robert Byrd, the Lion of the Senate, he used to be in the Klan. No one has a problem with that. And so you realize, yes, this is, you make the rules so vague and so narrow that they apply to everyone, and then you choose who's going to get hit. And who always happens to get hit, very coincidentally, the people who don't support Israel and the permanent warfare state.
Yep.
Always. It's even with the woke right term. The definition they're working off of is you awoken to something. That makes you woke. And by the way, here's a list of all the woke right people, and they completely coincidentally happen to be all of the right-wingers who don't support Israel and don't support the warfare state. It's always what it is. And it's the one comment, and that's another, it's a real problem of the kind of the racist thing being what you ruin people over.
Right.
Because again, we're all a little bit racist. People just don't want to admit it. But that's one thing growing up in New York City, you learn when you're around different people. It's not racism isn't something that belongs to old white men. It's something that every group has, and actually minorities in this country are quite willing to be open about it.
Yes.
Which is something that is, not discussed in liberal academia, but you go over to your Asian friend's house and his dad will tell you exactly how black people are, how Latino people are, how white people are. Anyway, so, even when I was talking to those alt-right guys back in the day, and part of the reason, and I never, I did always find the conversations interesting, but although I didn't agree, I always thought the ethno state thing was just a retarded non-starter of you're going to turn America into it, what this. But I guess I want to say this the right way because I know people will judge me for saying this. But in some ways, I kind of thought that the alt-right and then in some ways the Groypers, in a way, they were the most honest expression of the Trump moment.
Yeah.
Because I think there's through years of kind of political correctness, the post-war consensus, all of these things, it's almost like the older generation was there was an inability to just say it because it was perceived as racist in order to say it. So there's always code words. It's we have too much illegal immigration. We have too much of the we need, and when really what the issue was about was that America was being transformed racially. That it was being transformed from a majority white country, which it's always been through its entire history, and that's being changed. And it just seemed to me that it's pretty obvious that any, if you, whatever, the things the alt-right guys all used to say, if you went to Italy and said, hey, we have some demographic projections, this place is going to be 90% French in a few years. Isn't that wonderful? I think most of them would go, no, that's not wonderful because we want this to be Italy. And so, you have this drastic change that was completely forced on the American. There was never a choice. There was never a referendum on should America become a majority minority country? And that referendum wouldn't have done too good in 1960. You know, like if you had asked those people, or 65, whenever the bill was, if you had asked those people, that it would have been everybody, including all the black people, would have been like, no, we don't. You would have got 99% voting against it. This happened against the will of the Americans, and during that, it's not even like they're like, hey, the people never asked for this, but we're transforming your society anyway. But we're going to be really cool about it. They didn't even throw that last one in there. They went, you didn't ask for this. It's happening anyway. And fuck you and everything you hold dear. And also your son's a girl. Like it's like like on every level. And I think that was guaranteed to create a pushback. And I think it's crazy to not engage with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. That's how I interpreted the Trump revolution. When I was 18 and Trump won the election, and by we, I mean me and my followers at the time, or whoever I considered a fellow traveler, we viewed the Trump revolution as an implicit white identitarian movement. And that is what was loaded behind every slogan. Make America great again. Okay, when was America great? Was it great 15 years ago, or are you talking about like the 80s? And what was America like in the 80s? You know, it was a different color, it was a different flavor. We're going to say Merry Christmas again. Okay, what does that mean? Who doesn't say Merry Christmas? Liberals and all these people that practice different religions, Muslims and Jews for that matter, although Trump was always pro-Israel. And we saw Trump as basically just an implicit expression of that, and over time would become more explicit as the changes became sort of ignorable, the demographic changes, the cultural changes. And I do agree with your point, because as someone like myself, these were the conversations I was having, as maybe like a higher IQ. Obviously, I'm not just like a resentful, angry white man who doesn't like change. I was looking at this and saying, like you said before, it's not maybe desirable that America changes. You recognize this is in progress. It is happening. It, in some sense, has happened. And as maybe a young person, though, and being precocious and also impulsive and immature, I was trying to find the vocabulary and language to talk about these things. And I was interested in opinions on this. And I did talk to people at the time who were willing to engage with me. They were few and far between. And they would say, is it really practical, an ethno-state? You know, and clearly there's going to be diversity, but how are we going to live with that? How can we preserve some semblance of our way of life? And I feel like if there was more of a recognition that we deserve that we deserve engagement, a conversation, recognition, you know, that our grievances are valid, that it's okay to not be okay with the things that are happening, maybe the movement would have taken a different direction, or maybe it wouldn't be so much rage and conflict and division. But it's like you said, people were told, this is the way it's going to be. Your neighborhood is destroyed. It's irreversibly changed. If you have a problem with that, it's because you're a bad person. If that makes you angry, we're just going to take away your voice. And if you riot, then we're just going to throw you in jail and ruin your life. And it was just kind of like, I said this on my show, doubling down, always doubling down, ignoring intolerance. I know that's like trite at this point, but ironically, you know, the proponents of tolerance were intolerant of anyone that wasn't on board and anyone that didn't look like the new American they wanted to make. And I think that in some sense, maybe my ascendancy in the past couple of years as well, and this is accompanied by and maybe caused it, the Overton window moving to the right on everything, on race, on Israel, on crime, on immigration. Now that people are kind of like banging on the door of the liberal elite saying like, get out, now they're willing to have the conversation. Now they're saying, all right. Okay, maybe we could talk about turning some of this stuff back. And I've said on my show, I just hope this is the moment when there's introspection and we do talk and we find a resolution, because my fear is that we blow right past that and the worst elements with the worst impulses, because they are vindicated in some sense, are going to take control of this, and it is going to be a lot of populist anger, real resentment, real rage, real hatred, cruelty, because I think that's a distinct possibility.